The night was unusually cold when Emma's fever spiked. Her small body trembled as she called out for her mother, each mama piercing my heart like a needle. I called Ruth repeatedly, my fingers shaking as I pressed redial over and over, 112 times to be exact. The screen kept showing "call failed" until Emma's fever finally broke, bringing with it Ruth's dismissive text. "Isn't it enough that you're here?" The next morning brought another blow. Scrolling through social media, I saw Ruth's first love sharing a post that made my stomach turn. There, perfectly arranged on a wooden table, were 8 carefully plated dishes surrounding a steaming bowl of soup. But what caught my eye were those familiar hands in the photo. Ruth's hands, with their distinctive silver ring that I had given her on our 3rd anniversary. My chest tightened when I saw Ruth's response, 3 red hearts floating beneath the post. This time, something in me changed. Instead of calling to confront her, I simply liked the post and left a comment. "You two look compatible. Don't forget to pick up the divorce certificate." After 7 years of marriage, I had tried everything to warm the winter in Ruth's heart. But now, watching Emma tug at my sleeve with those big brown eyes asking, "Daddy, where's Mommy? I miss her," I could barely hold back my tears. Earlier that day, some kid at school had splashed water on Emma during recess. Now she was burning up with fever, her little face flushed red. I only discovered how sick she was when I passed her room that evening, drawn by the sound of muffled sobs. My 6-year-old daughter, always trying to be so brave, had curled herself into a tight ball under her pink blanket. Even as the nurse inserted the IV line, Emma didn't complain once. She just lay there, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. When I whispered that Mommy was just busy with work and would come see her soon, she stopped asking for her mother. But her eyes told a different story. With Emma's burning body pressed against my back as I rushed her to the hospital, I kept calling Ruth. Each unanswered ring felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't until 3 a.m., when Emma's fever finally broke, that Ruth bothered to reply, "Don't bother me. You're there, aren't you? That's enough." This wasn't the first time Ruth had abandoned our daughter in times of need. I still remembered how much she suffered during pregnancy and childbirth, the morning sickness, the complicated delivery, the sleepless nights. That's why I had taken on most of the parenting duties, hoping to give Ruth space to be herself while ensuring Emma grew up feeling like a princess. But I never imagined Ruth would become so completely detached from our daughter's life. Standing in the dim hospital room, clutching my phone with whitened knuckles, I watched Emma's peaceful, sleeping face. My heart felt like it was being torn apart. Sympathy for my innocent daughter, rage toward Ruth's coldness, and a deep, aching sadness for what our family had become. In that moment, I realized some broken things can't be fixed, no matter how hard you try to hold the pieces together. Wait, before we continue this emotional story, what do you think will happen next? Will Ruth choose her first love, David, over her family? And what about little Emma? How will this affect her? The next part of this story will shock you in ways you never expected. You see, what happens in the hospital changes everything. A mother's true colors are about to be revealed, and Jack will make a decision that will turn their lives upside down. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this unfolds. But first, if you're feeling the emotions in this story, if your heart is racing wondering what Ruth will do next, hit that like button right now. This helps more people discover stories like this one that make us think about love, family, and the choices we make. Subscribe to our channel because we bring you powerful stories like this one every week. Stories that will make you feel, think, and maybe even see your own relationships differently. Hit that notification bell too, so you never miss our latest uploads. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Maybe they're going through something similar, or maybe they just appreciate a good story about love, betrayal, and redemption. The truth was like broken glass in my hands, painful to hold, but impossible to drop. When I saw that social media post from Ruth's first love, My world tilted sideways. Who else understands my monthly moods? Only my precious girlfriend, he wrote. Below sat 8 perfectly arranged dishes surrounding a steaming bowl of soup, and there were Ruth's hands I'd held for 7 years, arranging flowers in a crystal vase. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. So this was Ruth's busy schedule, cooking elaborate meals for another man. The irony felt like acid in my throat. In all our years together, she'd never once cooked for our family. I remembered her words about restaurant chefs' wives, how their hands grew calloused and rough, how kitchen smoke turned their skin sallow. Those words echoed now with a hollow ring of deception. I had supported every choice she made, including her aversion to cooking. When she wanted to avoid the kitchen, I stepped in. Those nights when our nanny couldn't make it, I learned to navigate pots and pans, mastering the art of stir-frying. Even her hatred of takeout food, which she declared unsanitary and chaotic, became my challenge to overcome. I taught myself to cook, not just adequately, but well. Emma loved my cooking, her face lighting up at dinner time. But no matter how much effort I poured into making Emma's small fingers twisted together in her lap, a gesture so like her mother's that it made my chest ache. "But Daddy," she whispered, "why do we have to go? I want to stay with both you and Mommy." Standing in our kitchen later, stirring congee for Emma's sensitive stomach, a thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. If Ruth never truly loved me, why did she agree to have our child? The question burned in my mind, unanswered. Then Ruth's voice cut through my thoughts from the doorway, casual as ever. "I want drunken shrimp for lunch." The casual entitlement in her voice felt like sandpaper on my raw nerves. She hadn't even glanced at Emma's room, hadn't asked about our daughter's fever. Instead, here she was, demanding I make drunken shrimp, a dish that required hours of careful preparation. My heart felt like lead in my chest. "There's nothing in the fridge. You'll have to order takeout." The words came out cold, surprising even me. I heard myself making excuses, an old habit I couldn't shake. Ruth's eyes widened. This wasn't our usual script. For years, I'd jump at her every food request, no matter how exhausted I was from work. I'd dice and slice and steam, just to see her smile over a plate of her favorite food. "You know I don't eat takeout," she said, her perfect eyebrows drawing together. "Just call Wong Ma to cook." When I didn't immediately agree, her frown deepened. "What's with the attitude? Is it really that serious that I didn't come home last night?" I shook my head, words stuck in my throat. Her impatience flared as she threw her designer bag onto the table. "Oh, so this is about last time?" I already explained, yes, I promised to attend Emma's parent-child activity, but my old classmate was back from abroad. Was I supposed to ignore them? My jaw clenched. Her old classmate had a name. David, her first love. The memory of that day stabbed fresh pain through my chest. Emma standing alone while other kids pointed and whispered about her missing mother. A child with 2 parents, but one who might as well be a ghost. My phone calls had gone unanswered, each ring echoing with Emma's disappointment. Most activities needed both parents, and I'd watched my daughter's small shoulders slump lower and lower. On the drive home, I'd pulled out every silly joke and funny story I knew until I finally coaxed a laugh from her. That night, I'd waited until 3 a.m., pacing our living room like a caged animal. When Ruth finally appeared, our argument shook the walls. She'd made promises then, empty words about spending more time with Emma, promises that evaporated like morning dew. Coming back to the present, I met Ruth's irritated gaze. "It's all in the past," I said, my voice steady and distant. Confusion flickered across her face before she brightened. "Hey, isn't your mother's 60th birthday next week? Don't worry, I've already got a gift prepared." She bounced over, wrapping her arms around my waist in that familiar way, tilting her face up with the same sweet expression she'd worn in college. For a heartbeat, I saw her as she used to be, the young Ruth who'd stolen my heart with her vulnerability and charm. But like a mirage, the image shimmered and faded, leaving only the hollow present behind. Ruth stood there, unchanged by time, her porcelain skin flushed pink, radiating the same magnetic beauty that used to stop people in their tracks. It reminded me of our college days, when jealous classmates would crowd around her like moths to a flame. But I had been the lucky one, the one she chose. "Did you see my comment?" I asked, gently removing her hands from my waist. "How can you act like nothing's wrong?" A flicker of panic crossed her face, quick as lightning before disappearing behind practiced innocence. "What comment? David's just an old classmate who needed company. That's all." Before I could respond, she was already pulling me toward the bedroom. "Look what I found. A brown suit that would look perfect on you." Her eyes sparkled with that familiar excitement. It was our thing, her dressing me up like her personal mannequin, transforming her boyfriend into her ideal vision. The designer label screamed expensive, but Ruth was already urging me to try it on. My heart eyed, but Emma's face flashed in my mind. Maybe, for our daughter's sake, Ruth deserved one more chance. After all, she had given me the greatest gift, our beautiful little girl. What followed were days that felt like photographs from someone else's perfect life. Ruth suddenly transformed into the wife and mother I'd always hoped she'd be. She even agreed to the beach vacation she'd previously dismissed. "We have to go," she'd said with that playful pout I once found irresistible. "You worked so hard planning it. Besides, I want to have fun too." During the drive, I watched through the rearview mirror as mother and daughter giggled in the back seat, their laughter creating a melody I'd longed to hear. At the beach, Ruth chased Emma through the waves, built sandcastles with her, and snuggled with her in the oversized hotel bed. Emma bloomed under her mother's attention, her usual sadness replaced by pure joy. I found myself building castles in the air. If only Ruth would cut ties with David, we could preserve this happiness forever. We could be the family we were meant to be. But fantasy shattered against reality like waves on rocks. Just as I finalized our plane tickets to visit my mother, David's name appeared on Ruth's phone. His car had been rear-ended, he said. He needed help. Watching Ruth's face light up at his voice, I finally understood my true place in her heart. A convenient shadow, always there but never quite real enough to matter. The moment she ended the call, Ruth lunged for her suitcase. When I caught her arm, she tensed like a startled deer. "What could you possibly do there?" I asked. "Just call insurance?" But Ruth's eyes had that familiar distant look. "I have to see him." Emma stood frozen in her new princess dress, the one Ruth had bought in a rare moment of maternal attention. Her small hand reached out, grabbing her mother's skirt with trembling fingers. The scene felt like a painting of heartbreak, a child reaching for a mother already halfway gone. "If you choose him this time," my voice cracked, "we're getting divorced." The words tasted like defeat. Why keep someone whose heart belonged elsewhere? Ruth yanked free with a scoff. "Stop being so petty. Don't throw around divorce threats." Then she was gone, leaving Emma and me like discarded toys. That's when it happened. Emma's face contorted, her body rigid as she fought for air, mouth gaping like a fish out of water. "Emma?" Terror paralyzed me for a split second before I fumbled for my phone, punching in emergency services. "Ruth!" I screamed. "Look at our daughter!" But Ruth just glanced back, hesitated, and walked away. The emergency room was a blur of tests and worried doctors. Emma eventually stabilized, the test results showing nothing concrete. I reached for my phone to discuss finding a traditional medicine practitioner with Ruth, only to find David's message waiting like a poisoned arrow. "Rear-ended, but everyone's fine. Lucky Ruth was here. You don't mind? Right, Jack?" The attached GIF showed Ruth running toward him in her high heels, hair flying, face flushed with concern. The sight twisted my gut. I'd never let Ruth run to me like that. I'd always been willing to take 99 steps if she'd just take one in my direction. Then came the photo. Ruth nestled in David's arms, wearing that shy smile I once thought was mine alone. My fists clenched until my knuckles turned white. Even though I'd decided to end this twisted relationship, the betrayal still burned like acid in my chest. All my sincerity, all my love, crushed under David's designer shoes. And Emma, my precious daughter, dismissed like an afterthought. David had slithered back into our lives earlier that year, adding me on social media under the guise of being Ruth's concerned old classmate. He'd claimed he just wanted to know how she was doing. I'd sensed the malice behind his friendly facade, but foolish pride made me think I could protect my marriage by keeping him close. Instead, I'd front-row seats to my own humiliation. Later, cleaning my study, I found Ruth's old love diary. Each page breathed with the pure passion of first love, love that had never been mine. Every word was a testament to a heart I'd never truly won. The diary's pages held a truth I'd been running from. I was her backup plan, a tool to make David jealous. Even knowing this, I read those love-filled pages again and again, telling myself it was ancient history. What a fool I'd been. With trembling fingers, I sent the divorce agreement I'd drafted months ago to both her phone and email. Next came my resignation letter. Once Emma's health improved, we slipped away from the city like shadows at dawn. Ruth came home to an empty house, its silence a testament to our absence. Her call was immediate, frantic. "Jack, what game are you playing? Where have you taken Emma? Sign the divorce papers and send them back." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "How dare you say I don't love you?" Her indignation felt like a slap. Did she really expect me to list every moment she'd chosen David over us? Some truths don't need evidence. They live in the hollow spaces between heartbeats. "The agreement's simple," I continued. "You keep the house. I keep Emma." Panic crept into her voice before she masked it with anger. "Jack, you have exactly 1 day to bring my daughter home. I mean it." "I'm serious about the divorce, Ruth. No more games." The line went quiet. Our breathing synchronized across the miles between us. One last moment of unintended intimacy. "Just bring Emma home," she snapped, hanging up before I could respond. Inside my mother's house, Emma's laughter echoed through the halls as she played with her grandmother. For the first time in years, the sound held no shadow of sadness. A week later, the ancient wooden door creaked open to reveal Ruth, looking exhausted and laden with shopping bags. My frown met her evasive glance. After ignoring her calls and messages for days, I'd expected rage, not this unannounced visit. "Why are you here?" I asked, voice carefully neutral. "Why can't I come?" she shot back, irritation threading through her fatigue. "I'm here to see Mom and our daughter." Then she shouldered past me, bringing her chaos back into our sanctuary. Mom swept Ruth into the house like a long-lost treasure. "Ruth is here. You still love shrimp, don't you? Let me show you my special recipe at lunch." Ruth played her part perfectly, all sweet smiles and gentle words. "Oh, Mom, don't go to any trouble. Something simple would be perfect. I haven't had much appetite lately. I've missed your cooking so much." Mom's face crinkled with joy, her weathered hand patting Ruth's as if she could keep her there forever. "Jack," she called out, "why are you standing there like a statue? Go get your wife some fruit. Cherries, blueberries, anything she likes." "Mom, half those fruits aren't even in season," I sighed. "Your mother knows so much about everything," Ruth gushed, and Mom's laughter scared the spiders from their webs. Emma burst from her room at her mother's voice, launching herself at Ruth's legs like a human barnacle. "Mommy!" The sound of their reunion drove me to the yard, where I found myself staring at the neighbor's yellow dog, suddenly craving a cigarette, something I'd refused my entire life, through countless offers from friends and colleagues. Behind me, their laughter and chatter continued, punctuated by Emma's baby-like responses. The sound felt distant, like music from someone else's party. Ruth stayed the night. Before I could confront her, Mom cornered me in the hallway. I didn't ask when you showed up alone, but I knew you two must have fought. Ruth is beautiful, has a wonderful personality, and gave you Emma. What more could you want, son? The words stuck in my throat. How could I tell her about the reality behind Ruth's perfect facade? I'd never spoken ill of Ruth to Mom, only shared the good parts. So I forced a smile, nodded along, and tried to escape to my room. Listen to me, Mom continued, her voice softening. It's rare to find someone who truly understands you. Since your father passed 2 years ago, she paused, lost in memory. I used to nag him endlessly. Now I'd give anything just to see that old grapevine he planted. The weight of Mom's words made the thought of discussing divorce feel impossible. When I opened my bedroom door to find Ruth perched on my bed, glowing like she belonged there, the pressure in my chest grew unbearable. So, I said bluntly, why are you here? Did your precious first love send you running? How did you know? She asked, her face draining of color. The bedroom suddenly felt smaller, more confining. I know everything, I whispered, my voice barely audible. The weight of years of suspicion finally found its voice. I know you and David were neighbors. I know you grew up together, went to school together, first loves. I paused, watching her reactions carefully. And I know how deeply you fell for him. The story spilled out like an overturned glass. Their college romance, their plans for engagement, and then the catastrophe. David's father, seduced by promises of quick wealth, had lost everything to an online trading scam. Their family villa, their cars, all gone, replaced by crushing debt in the tens of millions. Ruth's parents, who had once welcomed David, turned against the match. Think of your future, they'd said. But it was David who ended things, even when Ruth offered to help with the debts. He left the country to stop. Anger bubbled up inside me, hot and bitter. Just stop. Do you love me? Do you love our daughter? She stood up from the bed, meeting my gaze. Of course I love you both, she said, her voice steady and clear. Too clear, too practiced. Really? I pulled out my phone. Then where were you when our daughter had her episode at the airport? Do you know she woke up crying for her mom? I opened my gallery, finding the evidence that had first raised my suspicions. Screenshots of messages between them, and entries from her diary I'd discovered. September 4th, David. Coming over for drinks tonight? Ruth. Jack won't mind. David. You seem down. I'll keep you company. September 12th. David. Stay over? Ruth. As if, though I've got a slight cold. Might be lovesickness. David. Take care of yourself. Should I come check on you? The messages painted a picture of two people dancing around the edges of something dangerous, something that threatened to destroy everything we'd built. I need a cold shower, I muttered, tossing the phone onto the bed beside Ruth. The messages that followed were too painful to read, words that crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. Ruth picked up the phone, confusion clouding her features. As she scrolled through the chat history, the color drained from her face. I watched her, feeling hollow inside. I had to know, I said quietly. When I gave you the new phone, something made me keep your old one. I recovered the deleted data. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. I just wanted to prove my suspicions wrong. Ruth's face crumpled. I swear nothing physical happened between us, she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. Does it matter? I snapped. Emotional betrayal or physical, they both destroy trust. They both break homes. The anger that had been simmering inside me finally boiled over. After the divorce, just leave. Get out of my house. Jack, please, she stammered, reaching for me. I can't bear to lose you. The past week had been hell for her. I knew that. She'd waited desperately for me to bring our daughter home that first day. As darkness fell and her stomach growled with hunger, she'd made herself a lonely meal of instant noodles, refusing to call Wang Ma for help. By the third day, her frustration had exploded. She'd destroyed all her expensive cosmetics in a fit of rage. By the sixth day, panic had set in. My phone remained off. I ignored all messages, even from friends trying to mediate. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her actions. Wake up, I said to her sleeping form. Your first love is here. My voice was empty of emotion. It's a weekday. Perfect timing to visit the Civil Affairs Bureau. You can marry him by sunset. Ruth's eyes flew open, panic replacing sleep. No, she protested. I won't divorce you. I can't. What about our daughter? I asked. Have you thought about her growing up with a stepmother? As if summoned by her mention, our little girl appeared in the doorway. She clutched her capybara plush toy, the one Ruth had given her, the one she couldn't sleep without because it smelled like Mommy. Tears were already forming in her eyes. Mommy, our daughter's voice trembled. The uncle outside said you don't want me and Daddy anymore. Is that true? She clutched her plush toy tighter, tears threatening to spill. Before Ruth could answer, I stepped in. Better to cut clean than let wounds fester. Yes, Emma. Your mother and I are separating. I knelt to her level. Would you want to stay with me or Mommy? Daddy really hopes you'll choose me. Emma's face crumpled, her sobs growing louder with each breath. The sound drew David back into the room. He placed his hand on Ruth's shoulder, his voice honey-sweet. Ruth, we can finally be together. Ruth jerked away from his. Ruth collapsed into tears, the kind that shake your whole body, the kind that feel like they'll never end. She'd lost everything that mattered. Jack's steady love, their daughter's innocent trust, chasing a fantasy that shattered in her hands. Despite David's desperate pleas, she filed for divorce again. This time, she walked away with nothing but the clothes on her back and the weight of her mistakes. Alone in a small apartment, she finally understood the true cost of chasing dreams instead of cherishing reality. The news spread like wildfire. David had AIDS. His pregnant mistress made sure everyone knew before he could slip away to another city. Ruth shuddered with relief. She'd never been intimate with him. Still, she got tested just to be sure. The results were negative, but the emotional scars ran deep. One autumn afternoon, she found herself outside Jack's house. He stood in the yard, tall and strong, smiling at something she couldn't see. Then she noticed the beautiful woman beside him, and their daughter Emma, her hair in neat braids with a butterfly clip, dancing around the woman's legs with pure joy. It was a side of Emma that Ruth had never seen. Her daughter had always been so careful, so guarded around her. Those braids looked perfect. Jack must have learned for Emma's sake. Ruth slipped away, her heart heavy with loss. I saw Ruth that day, standing outside my gate. One glance was enough. I turned away. The woman with me was someone Mom's friend had introduced. I wasn't ready to remarry, but seeing Emma smile so freely made me wonder if it was time to try again. Looking back, Ruth thought, her relationship with Jack had been unexpected. He'd caught her eye immediately, helping her heal from the forced separation from David. Jack had given her countless happy memories, made her heart race, her cheeks flush. His gentleness had won her over completely. Why else would she have married him? Then David reappeared, her deepest regret from youth. Their love cut short so suddenly. The day she agreed to divorce Jack, regret had crushed her, but she'd blindly accepted David's proposal anyway. Marriage to David was like falling from heaven into hell. She thought of Jack constantly, replaying their memories like favorite scenes from a movie. but there was no going back. She'd destroyed everything beautiful in her life. Jack's mother's words haunted her. "You'll regret this forever. My son is precious. You didn't cherish him, but others will." During her monthly visits with Emma, Jack would vanish like mist. She never tried to speak with him. She remembered Emma's first visit, how her daughter had grabbed her thin wrist, tiny fingers tracing the rough skin of her palm. "Mommy, are you okay now?" Emma had asked innocently. Fighting back tears, Ruth had knelt down. "Mommy's fine. I just want you to be happy, Xiao Xiao." Emma had nodded. "I am happy with Daddy." Ruth limited her visits. Each one drowned her in guilt and regret, but she refused to burden Emma with her pain. This would be her life now, watching from afar as Jack and Emma built their happiness without her, carrying the weight of her choices like stones in her heart.